The playoffs are here and we have more injuries we have to deal with. So I'm not only going to look at running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, but I'm also going to be talking about some quarterback streamers in case you lost someone like Stroud or Herbert, and also defensive streamers because every point we can get this week is going to matter. Now, starting off at running back, we will be looking at the Raiders situation. And from what I can tell right now, this is the immediate reaction to the Josh Jacobs injury. It looks like you're going to be without no Jacobs for a couple weeks at the minimum. Keep in mind, this is a situation where there's no reason for him to rush himself back. I mean, it's not like the Raiders are playing for anything here. And I believe they are playing this Thursday. So most likely, it's going to be either the Zamir White or Amir Abdullah show in Las Vegas. And I know a lot of people are going to be very excited to go out there and pick these guys up, right? I mean, Zamir White only rostered in 2% of leagues. Amir Abdullah rostered in 0%. And if you're looking at who most people are going to go towards, they're going to go towards Zamir White. Zamir White makes sense as more of the one-for-one replacement of Josh Jacobs, operating on first and second downs. And if you're looking at what we've had from Zamir White so far this year and last year, I would say that I am not excited at all. Zamir White really has not been able to get on the field in the slightest. If you were to look at the snaps played by the running backs this week, obviously it's a little bit deceiving given the game environment and the fact that Jacobs did go down at the end of the game. But you did only have 5 snaps from Zamir White compared to Amir Abdullah. Zamir White's had 35 carries in his entire NFL career. Wasn't a great prospect coming out of Georgia. And going over to Amir Abdullah, I'd say he's probably going to have a role as well. Now, I'm not expecting Amir Abdullah to be the full-blown starting running back. I'm more so expecting Zamir White to be the first and second down guy and Abdullah to be the third down running back in Las Vegas. If you look at Abdullah, the last time that he had more than, say, 50-something carries in a season was back in 2017. That was the year Cooper Kupp got drafted, ladies and gentlemen. So Abdullah is dust. I mean, hell, he's 30, but he's still going to have a role as a receiver. Zamir White isn't a better running back than Josh Jacobs. So if you ask yourselves, should he be excited about these RBs? The answer is probably not, because Jacobs was a running back seeing every single touch out of this backfield. Now, you most likely have these two guys splitting that same backfield, and it's not like Jacobs was great to begin with. Jacobs more talented than these players. So to be honest with you, I'm not super excited about what we have in Las Vegas. Now let's go over and let's look at Cincinnati, because the immediate comment that I got on YouTube during the Sunday games, which is usually, "Oh my God, Mason, I can't believe you told me to start player X. This guy's horrible." Or, "I can't believe you told me to bench player Y. He just scored a touchdown." Usually that's the first comment. But the first one I got this Sunday was, "Oh, Mason, you got to start talking about Chase Brown here. Chase Brown is good to go. Chase Brown is someone that we can look at going forward." And while, yeah, Chase Brown in your underdog basketball drafts did have himself a day. He had 80 receiving yards and the receiving touchdown. He had 8 carries, 9 carries last week as well. And I do think you should pick up Chase Brown. Chase Brown's not someone that we're going to be starting. Chase Brown now falls in the bucket of someone like Tajee Spears, where you're really never going to be starting him unless we were to see an injury to the running back in front of him. But if you're looking at the prospect profile, he does check a lot of boxes. He was a decent athlete. He had the size that we look for, and he was a receiving back in college. Now we are seeing these skills transition to the NFL level. So if you were to have an injury to Joe Mixon, then at that point, Chase Brown would be exciting. But with a healthy Joe Mixon, probably just someone that you're going to ride on your bench, but you can pick him up if you have that extra spot. Like we said, very similar situation in Tennessee. Derrick Henry maybe a little bit different because Henry, we know, is not good in blowouts, and you'll get a little more Tajee Spears in blowouts. And speaking of that, that's what I'm expecting tonight. So I'm going to be going with fewer than 53.5 rushing yards for Derrick Henry on Underdog Fantasy. I believe that's actually 55.5. We're going to go fewer than 55. But yeah, you can find that link in the description in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK and get a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a 2 special pickup, more than less than half a total yard for tonight's game. But let's move over to Deonta Foreman. Now, Foreman rostered in 38% of leagues and obviously had a stretch earlier about a month ago where the man looked phenomenal. He had 20 carries 83 rushing yards against the Saints back at the beginning of November. In the middle of November, he goes out against Carolina. He has the rushing touchdown. He has 21 carries, and he has shown that he can be a running back used on all 3 downs. And at the same time, he goes out and he pretty much locks himself in to the 1st and 2nd down role here in Chicago, where you have 39 snaps for Deonta Foreman total. You have 20 total snaps for Roschon Johnson. Pretty much all of the Foreman snaps come on early downs. All of the 2-minute drill and the 3rd down snaps go to Roschon. Now, of course, all these graphs and snap data from PFF, that's one thing. And the second thing is Khalil Herbert is still getting mixed in. So while Deonta Foreman technically is the starting running back in Chicago, unless you were to get an injury to either Khalil Herbert or Roschon Johnson, I'm probably not starting anybody here, even if Foreman is the starter, and even if we want to throw up the hook 'em horns. But let's go over to someone that we can actually start. Let's go to the number 1 pickup this week in my mind. Right now, it looks like you have a high ankle sprain for Alexander Mattison. So with no Alexander Mattison here, that vaults Ty Chandler up to being the starting running back in Minnesota. And unlike what you have in Las Vegas, where no Josh Jacobs, that's going to equal a split backfield between Zamir White and Amir Abdullah, what we are looking at with Ty Chandler is we're looking at a running back that is most likely going to close in on 100% of the work here for the Minnesota Vikings. It's a running back that had 12 carries this week, a measly 35 rushing yards. Obviously, this entire offense was disgusting. Hopefully, this offense is better going forward if you find yourself in a position where you have to start them. But if you look at the underlying snaps played, you had Ty Chandler with 40 snaps compared to other running backs not named Alexander Mattison at 3. So Chandler should be the 3-down back. Ty Chandler, at the same time, is a running back that we've seen be involved as a receiver over the past 3 weeks. Chandler's had 9 total targets. So yeah, if you have no Alexander Mattison, I'm probably going to be ranking Ty Chandler as a low-end RB2, high-end RB3 this week. Now, let's go over to the wide receiver position. Starting off with Noah Brown. Noah Brown, not someone we are excited about this week just because it's a horrible matchup going up against the Jets. And yeah, I mean, Noah Brown gets you 0 receptions for 0 receiving yards. So I pray to God you did not start the guy, but hopefully he is fully healthy going into next week. So you have no Dalton Schultz, you have no Nico Collins, and you have no Tank Dell. So Noah Brown's legitimately the last guy standing here in Houston. Now, I do not think Noah Brown is a special talent by any stretch of the imagination. We did see the ceiling earlier this year with 153 receiving yards against Tampa, with 172 receiving yards against Cincinnati. I was with no Nico Collins in this offense. But because I don't think he is a special talent, this all hinges on the availability of CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud in concussion protocol, typically we have seen these guys miss about a week. And if Stroud does miss a week, then honestly, we're not going to be looking at playing Noah Brown this week. But if Stroud is good to go, I'll probably rank Noah Brown as a low-end wide receiver too. And if CJ Stroud misses this week, then he should be back at minimum in week 16 based off what we've seen this year from concussion protocol. Now let's go over to Odell. Odell, the first time we actually said, yes, let's pick him up, was right after the Mark Andrews injury. Just because with no Andrews here, you are seeing Odell actually consistently see more targets here as a receiver. Over the past 3 weeks, Odell Beckham Jr. has now had 22 targets. He's averaging slightly over 7 targets per game. Over the past 3 weeks, he's also been phenomenal if you're looking at the receiving volume. I mean, right now he's averaging about 70-ish receiving yards per game over the past 3. He had a receiving touchdown this week as well. Obviously, the passing volume was through the roof here in Baltimore. Now, the reality of the situation is if you're playing in a 10-team league, even a 12-team format where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, none of these depth wide receivers are going to be super exciting for you. This is more so going to be if you're playing in that 12-team league where you also have 2 flex spots. Or maybe you're starting 3 wide receivers and a flex, and then you're having to go a little bit deeper at the wide receiver position. Now, if you're having to go deeper, we'll also give a shout out to Zay Jones. No Christian Kirk here. So not only do you have Evan Ingram and Calvin Ridley with a ton of target volume, but Zay Jones actually leads the team in targets with 14 now. He doesn't do anything with these targets. A lot of them are empty volume. We know that Zay Jones is the primary field stretching option here in Jacksonville. But what we can maybe look at here with Zay Jones is a wide receiver that slides into being the Gabe Davis mold. You're more excited about him in an underdog best ball draft. But if you're playing in that deeper redraft league where maybe you have to start 3 wide receivers and 2 flex spots and you're dealing with the multitude of injuries, now that Zay Jones is getting those consistent deep shots, you're not going to be surprised at all, especially as Lawrence gets healthier, if they are able to connect on 1 or 2 over the next few weeks. Now let's go over to the tight end position. I know one thing that people are going to rush out to do is pick up Hunter Henry. And while, yeah, Hunter Henry, obviously phenomenal this past Thursday, multiple receiving touchdowns. Y'all know I care about the underlying volume, the underlying usage. And here you have 3 targets this past week, 4 targets the week prior, 5 targets, 6. So he's gone from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3. Ain't sure in the right direction, ladies and gentlemen. But before that, 3, 3, 3, 2. The reality of the situation is outside the first month, Hunter Henry hasn't been a tight end that's consistently seeing volume. Even though Hunter Henry had 2 receiving touchdowns this past week, still not ranking him as a top 10 tight end. So instead, at tight end, I would rather go get someone like Isaiah Likely that's trending in the right direction in terms of his involvement in this offense. You've seen 6 and 7 targets over the past 2 weeks now with no Mark Andrews. This is starkly different than what you had back in week 1 going up against Houston, where obviously we had no Mark Andrews in that game either. So yeah, if I had to pick between these 2 tight ends, I am going to go Isaiah Likely for sure. But Likely is rostered in 55% of leagues, so there's a good shot that Likely is already rostered in yours. Now let's go over to some potential quarterback streamers here. If you lost Justin Herbert, you're not picking up Easton Stick. If you lost CJ Stroud, you're not picking up Davis Mills with no weapons in Houston. A quarterback that has weapons that I was not on the hype train with out of the Jacksonville game, but now I'm getting on. Jake Browning playing well, right? I'm honestly very surprised to see this. If you're looking at what we've had this season, 5 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, throwing the ball. Add on the 2 rushing touchdowns. You have a 7-to-2 touchdown interception ratio. He's giving you some rushing upside here as well. And ultimately, if you're sitting here in an offense with Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Mixon playing very well, I mean, this is a spot where he's finding success and you have to give him the respect of what he's been doing. And then Stafford, I'd say maybe is a little bit more of a reliable pickup where we have a much larger sample with Stafford, especially now that it looks like Kupp is fully healthy as Puka as well. So, I mean, if we had to pick between the 2 quarterbacks, I'm definitely going to be going Stafford over Browning. But similar to the tight end situation, Stafford's also going to be rostered in significantly more leagues. Now, let's go over to some defensive streamers. And our first pickup here will be the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders defense just pretty much shut out the Minnesota Vikings. Raiders played great, and the more important thing is looking at their Week 15 matchup. They're going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, which typically not something that we are super excited about. But this week, you have no Justin Herbert. So if Easton Stick is the guy, I mean, this Chargers offense should straight up implode. Right now, if we're looking at Las Vegas totals, I mean, they have this game at over under 34 points. They also have the Raiders as 3-point favorites. So as it stands right now, the Los Angeles Chargers should have an implied team total hovering around 15.5 points. Should be one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And yeah, I'm really completely fine targeting the Chargers playing defenses now. And then going over to another potential streamer, we're going to have the Atlanta Falcons. They're rostered in 32% of leagues, so maybe it's a little bit tougher to get to them. But very similar situation. You're going up against Carolina. Bryce Young's been one of the worst, if not the worst, starting quarterbacks in the NFL this year. You're looking at Atlanta's 3-point favorites. You have an over-under of this game about 34.5 to 35 points. So very similar situation. The Panthers should have one of the lowest implied team totals in the NFL. And obviously, they've been very bad for a very long time now. Now, both these defenses are somehow rostered, and we needed to go even deeper. If you have no CJ Stroud, no Nico Collins, no Tank Dell, no Dalton Schultz, then in that instance, the Tennessee Titans, despite really not being a good defense this season, could be a viable pickup playing at home against the Houston Texans. But I don't want to be leading it off with them being the best streamer because they're clearly only a streamable option if you have no CJ Stroud, and if it's that, it is Davis Mills. But I think that should be it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed it, please go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to Play Fantasy Football. I do want to remind y'all on the Dynasty Football Flock YouTube channel, we are going to begin uploading videos every single day. And that's where we're going to be talking about Dynasty Fantasy Football and your keeper leagues all season. If you're interested in that, just search Dynasty Football Flock on YouTube. But yeah, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems, if you wanted to go and take Derrick Henry fewer than 55.5 rushing yards for tonight, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and a 2 special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. I really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.